Imagine walking into a Nazi death camp voluntarily. One man did it. His name was Witold Pilecki, and this is his untold story. Grounded at Austerlitz, as Napoleon stood atop the Pratzen Heights, his heart pounding with fierce determination. The bitter December wind carried the acrid smell of gunpowder across the battlefield, while the morning fog slowly lifted to reveal the vast armies before him. The fate of Europe hung in the balance. September 1939 changed Europe forever. Nazi Germany invaded Poland with brutal speed, crushing cities, villages, and human hope beneath tanks and bombs. Amid the chaos, a Polish cavalry officer named Witold Pilecki watched his country collapse under occupation. He was not famous. He was not powerful, but he was deeply loyal to Poland and believed that truth was a weapon stronger than any gun. As the Nazis tightened control, rumors began spreading about a mysterious camp called Auschwitz. People disappeared and never returned. Whispers spoke of starvation, torture, and mass death. But whispers were not enough. The world needed proof. Pilecki made a decision so extreme that even fellow resistance members tried to stop him. He would voluntarily enter Auschwitz. He would become a prisoner so he could report what truly happened inside. In September 1940, during a Nazi roundup in Warsaw, Pilecki deliberately allowed himself to be arrested. He carried false papers and used a fake name. As he was pushed into a cattle car packed with terrified men, he knew there was a strong chance he would never come back. Days later, the train doors opened. Prisoners were beaten, screamed at, and forced to run. Over the gate hung a cruel lie. Arbeit macht frei. Work makes you free. Pilecki received his new identity, prisoner 4859. At that moment, he crossed into a world where humanity ended. From the first hour, Auschwitz revealed its true nature. Prisoners were stripped naked, shaved, and beaten until they could barely stand. Guards used clubs, rifle butts, and boots as casually as tools. A man could be killed simply for standing the wrong way or looking up at the wrong moment. Fear was not an accident here. It was the system. Pilecki quickly learned that survival depended on silence, obedience, and luck. Prisoners were given numbers, not names. Hunger became a permanent condition. A thin soup made from rotten vegetables and a piece of bread meant to last all day was all they received. Men collapsed during roll call and were beaten for falling. Those who could not stand were dragged away, never to be seen again. Disease spread faster than rumors. Typhus, dysentery, and infections killed thousands. The barracks were overcrowded wooden sheds where men slept stacked like objects. Rats ran freely at night. The stench of death never left the air. Crematorium smoke rose constantly, reminding everyone what awaited them. But even inside this engineered hell, Pilecki did not give up. Quietly, carefully, he began to build a resistance network. He found other Polish prisoners, soldiers, doctors, teachers, men who still believed in something beyond survival. They shared food, warned each other of selections, and secretly passed information. Pilecki memorized names, numbers, punishments, and killings. He documented executions, medical experiments, and mass starvation. Using smuggled notes and trusted messengers, he sent reports outside the camp. These messages became some of the first eyewitness accounts of Auschwitz sent to the Polish resistance and eventually to the Allies. Every day, discovery meant death. Yet Pilecki continued, knowing that if the truth survived, then humanity had not completely died inside Auschwitz. He was prisoner 4859, but inside he was still a soldier fighting a war no one else could see. Auschwitz was designed to destroy resistance. Pilecki decided to build one anyway. Slowly, invisibly, one prisoner at a time. He formed a secret network called ZOW, a resistance organization inside the camp itself. Members didn't know everyone, only the few above and below them. If one man broke, the others might survive. They shared food with the weakest, warned each other before selections, forged work assignments to keep men alive. Doctors hid patients. Prisoners stole medicine. Every small act was an act of war. Most dangerous of all, Information. Pilecki wrote reports detailing mass executions, starvation, medical experiments, and the arrival of transports that never left. These reports were smuggled out through released prisoners and civilian workers. Outside the camp, the Polish resistance listened. And then, the Allies. Pilecki begged for action. Bomb the camp. Attack the guards. Do something. But the world hesitated. Inside Auschwitz, the killings accelerated. Gas chambers expanded. Transports grew larger. Children arrived. Pilecki realized something terrifying. Waiting meant millions would die. So he made another impossible decision. If the world wouldn't come to Auschwitz, he would escape Auschwitz himself. But escaping Auschwitz was considered impossible, and the last men who tried were publicly tortured to death. Auschwitz did not kill randomly. It selected point one winter morning, before the sun rose. Prisoners were dragged from their bunks and forced into endless rows. Snow cut into bare feet. Breath froze in the air. This was not a normal roll call. Pilecki felt it instantly. This was a selection. SS doctors walked slowly along the lines, gloved hands pointing left or right. Left meant labor. Right meant disappearance. Men tried to stand taller, hide their weakness, wipe fever from their faces. Some pinched their own skin to look alive. Others whispered prayers. A few simply stared forward, already broken. Pilecki watched a man beside him, barely older than 20, collapse from exhaustion. An SS guard didn't shout. He didn't hesitate. One bullet. The body was dragged away like trash. Pilecki understood the terrifying truth. Auschwitz was testing how fast it could erase humanity. That same day, he witnessed something even darker. Prisoners were taken for medical examinations. They never returned. Later, Pilecki learned the truth: human experiments, injections, infections, surgeries without anesthesia. Men used like lab animals until they died. That night, in the barracks, whispers spread. A transport had arrived. Families, women, children. By morning, the children were gone. Smoke from the crematorium was thicker than ever. Pilecki wrote everything into his memory: numbers, times, patterns. He knew these details mattered. He knew the world had to know. But a terrifying question haunted him. What if no one believed it? The resistance network inside the camp was growing, but so was Nazi suspicion. Informers were everywhere. One mistake meant mass executions. Then, a quiet warning reached Pilecki through a trusted prisoner. Your name is being watched. For the first time since entering Auschwitz, Pilecki felt something close to fear, not of death, but of failing his mission. Because if he died now, the truth would die with him. And Auschwitz would continue in silence. The camp tightens its grip. Betrayal is near. And Pilecki must decide: stay longer to gather proof, or risk everything to escape. By 1942, Auschwitz was no longer just a prison. It was a machine built for death. Pilecki had now spent nearly 2 years inside the camp. He had watched strong men turn into skeletons and kind men turn silent forever. But something darker was happening. New transports arrived daily. Jews, intellectuals, entire families. Unlike earlier prisoners, many of them were not even registered. They were sent directly somewhere else. Smoke never stopped rising. Pilecki began hearing whispers of gas chambers. Rooms disguised as showers. Prisoners told to undress calmly. Doors sealed. Screams that lasted minutes, then nothing. At first, even Pilecki struggled to believe it. Industrialized murder sounded impossible. But then guards began talking. Openly, SS officers bragged while drunk. Doctors conducted selections, pointing left or right with a finger. Life or death decided in seconds. Pilecki's resistance network expanded inside the camp. They called it the ZOW, a secret army hidden among prisoners. They stole medicine, shared food, forged work assignments, and saved lives when they could. But most importantly, they gathered proof. He recorded numbers, dates, methods. He described the gas, the bodies, the crematorium capacity. This was no rumor anymore. It was genocide. Reports were smuggled out again. Pilecki begged the Polish resistance and the Allies to act. He proposed something unthinkable: an attack on Auschwitz. An uprising from inside, supported from outside. But weeks passed, then months. No help came, and Pilecki realized a terrifying truth. The world might know, and still do nothing. Hope is dangerous in a place like Auschwitz. Pilecki saw it slowly disappear from men's eyes. Prisoners stopped talking about freedom. They stopped whispering prayers. Survival alone became exhausting. Every morning roll call felt like a coin toss with death. The resistance network was weakening. Members were caught, tortured, publicly executed. Hanging bodies were left on display as warnings. One mistake could destroy everything Pilecki had built. Worst of all, the Allies still did nothing. Pilecki's reports had reached London. They were read, discussed, archived. Some officials believed them. Others said the details were exaggerated. Mass murder on this scale was too horrible to imagine. Inside Auschwitz, imagination was no longer needed. Death was routine. Pilecki began to question himself. Had his sacrifice been pointless? Had he entered hell only to scream in a silence? Then came a new threat. The SS began tightening control. Random searches increased. Prisoner movements were restricted. Someone had talked. Someone had betrayed them, or been forced to. Pilecki's name was whispered among guards. If he stayed, capture was inevitable. Torture would follow. And under torture, even the strongest man could break. If Pilecki broke, the resistance would die with him. So he made another impossible decision. He would escape Auschwitz. Not for freedom, but to warn the world one last time. Escaping Auschwitz was considered impossible. The camp was surrounded by electric fences, guard towers, patrols, and informants. Most who tried were caught and executed. Their barracks were punished. Escape was not just suicide, it was collective death. Pilecki planned carefully. He waited months, studied guard routines, chose men he trusted with his life. On the night of April 26, 1943, Pilecki and 2 prisoners made their move. Disguised as guards, they overpowered a sentry. Chains were broken. Shots echoed in the distance. Alarms began to scream. They ran. Bullets tore through the darkness. Dogs barked wildly. Every step could be their last. At any moment, a spotlight could freeze them forever. But somehow, they crossed the final line. Pilecki collapsed in the forest beyond the camp. For the first time in nearly 3 years, he was free. Yet freedom did not feel like victory. Because behind him, Auschwitz continued to operate. Thousands were still dying every day. Pilecki reached the resistance and delivered his full report. Detailed, precise, undeniable. He again demanded action. Bomb the rail lines. Attack the camp. Save whoever could still be saved. History would later reveal the answer. The world knew, and Auschwitz continued. Part 8 will reveal what happened after the war, and why Pilecki's story ends in a way even more tragic than Auschwitz itself. Smiling face with Horn's film projector in 1945, the war ended. Europe celebrated. Flags rose. Prison camps opened. The world believed evil had been defeated. But for Witold Pilecki, freedom brought a new kind of nightmare. Poland was no longer under Nazi rule, but under Soviet control. The same country he had sacrificed everything for was now ruled by a different oppressor. The communist government, backed by Stalin, viewed resistance fighters as enemies of the state. Pilecki had a chance to escape. Friends urged him to flee to the West. He had survived Auschwitz. He had survived torture, hunger, and execution lines. This time, survival would have been easy. He refused. Instead, Pilecki volunteered again, this time to spy on the communist regime. He gathered evidence of arrests, executions, and disappearances. Former heroes were being hunted. Prisons were full again. Fear had returned, wearing a new uniform. Pilecki wrote reports. He warned the Polish government in exile. He hoped the West would listen. They didn't. In May 1947, the secret police came for him. He was arrested quietly, without drama. No cattle cars, no camp gates, just a knock at the door and chains. This time, there would be no escape plan, and no one was coming to save him. Pilecki was taken to Mokoto prison, a place infamous even among prisoners. Interrogations lasted for days without sleep. Beatings were constant. Bones broke. Teeth shattered. Pain was endless. Later, Pilecki would say that communist torture was worse than Auschwitz. They demanded names, networks, confessions. He gave him nothing. His trial was a lie from the start. The verdict was already decided. He was accused of spying, treason, and plotting against the state, the same state he had spent his life defending. The courtroom was silent. No press, no witnesses, no justice. Pilecki stood thin and broken, but unbowed. He did not beg. He did not deny who he was. He spoke calmly, knowing every word might be his last. The sentence was death. Outside the prison walls, the world moved on, rebuilding, forgetting. The man who had willingly entered Auschwitz to warn humanity was now being erased by history. But before they killed him, Pilecki did one last thing. He forgave his executioners. On May 25, 1948, Witold Pilecki was executed with a shot to the back of the head. His body was buried in an unmarked grave. His family was never told where. For decades, his name was forbidden in Poland. School books ignored him. Records were destroyed. Speaking his story was dangerous. The man who volunteered for hell was erased from memory. But truth has a way of surviving. After the fall of communism, documents resurfaced. Witnesses spoke. His reports from Auschwitz shocked historians. World leaders finally read the warnings they had once ignored. Today, Witold Pilecki is recognized as one of the bravest men in history. He entered Auschwitz by choice. He escaped to tell the truth. He stayed when he could have fled. And he died not as a victim, but as a soldier who never stopped fighting. The Nazis tried to break him. The communists tried to erase him. They failed, because as long as his story is told, Witold Pilecki still lives.